Good afternoon, everyone. Joshua Severe Weather. Happy Friday to you. My thoughts and prayers are with everybody who's been impacted by Hurricane Helene and her remnants now in the southeast and in the mid-Atlantic and in parts of the Ohio and Tennessee valleys. Just a generational storm, maybe not from a category perspective. I know there have been stronger storms that have hit the Gulf in recent years, but from an impact standpoint, we are now seeing historic flooding that has never occurred to this magnitude in parts of the southeast. Just very, very difficult to see. I'm a meteorologist, and obviously I want everybody to be prepared, but even this is worse than what I even could fathom. So a historic flood emergency ongoing right now for much of western North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, portions of North Georgia, East Tennessee. We may see some of that spreading into Western Virginia here as well. And also quite a bit of just general flooding left behind across Florida and Georgia from the heavy rain, the strong winds from yesterday, and from bands of rain coming through the Carolinas. Storm surge in the Tampa Bay area, just incredible, even well over 100 miles east of where the storm made landfall. So the category doesn't matter at this point anymore. Obviously, it does for wind damage at the coast and for the record books, but the lives that have been impacted by something like this, I mean, we're seeing 20, 30,000 people or more that have had their lives interrupted this week, and some are not going to have homes to go back to, unfortunately. So, look, my thoughts and prayers are with everybody. I would love to say we're finished, but we do have a potential threat developing later next week towards the Gulf of Mexico once again. And obviously, we've got some time to narrow down how this may play out. But it is something I would like you all to at least be aware of here, as my aim is to help save lives and bring important weather systems that are going to disturb people's lives up before it becomes too late to prepare. So that is this area in yellow here. Odds have increased to about a 30% chance. It hasn't formed yet. We've got probably another 4 or 5 days before that happens. But if you remember going back a little over a week, that was pretty much the exact same spot where Helene formed. And this storm, I'm not promising will be another Helene, but it certainly has some potential if it gets into the Gulf in the right spot to become a hurricane again. The remains of Helene are starting to spin down, moving very quickly northward at 32 miles per hour. The storm is eventually going to merge with an upper low and slow down and drift northwestward into middle Tennessee and Kentucky here through the entire weekend. That will put basically a break on the extreme amounts of rain in the eastern U.S., but will continue to bring some cooler, wet weather into the Ohio Valley, and some flooding could be a concern. We do have two named storms that are not a threat to land. Hurricane Isaac strengthening now over the cooler waters of the North Atlantic, and newly formed Tropical Storm Joyce, and a new wave to watch that could form into our system behind it here by the time we get towards the middle of next week. The next two names on the list are Kirk and Leslie, and these two may be battling out to see who gets Kirk and who gets Leslie. But nonetheless, we have had 4 landfalling hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico, and I'm predicting at least 1 or 2 more as the season wears on. Here's a look at Category 3 plus landfalls just in the last 7 years. And very clearly, the Florida Panhandle and Big Bend have gotten it the worst, but Southwest Florida as well, Louisiana, and Texas. This is from Tomerberg's website. And we may have another one here still to go. I was predicting a destructive season. Now, the number of storms has not been as high as expected due to that quiet period we had. However, the Gulf is still open for season here for at least the next month, in my opinion. We have Helene here moving northwest and slowing down. We have Isaac, and then we have 2 main development region waves, one of which is now a tropical storm. As I update this, Joyce, you'll see the track here. The next one behind it will follow a similar path. And we also have John, which is weakening to a tropical storm and bringing incredible amounts of flooding, even worse than what we're seeing here in the southeast to portions of southern Mexico. So far this season, you can see the map's been pretty busy. Admittedly, a lot quieter out here than I expected, but a lot of our impact storms have gone into the Gulf with the exception of Ernesto. And we now are going to add Joyce to the map here as well, east of where Gordon was, only our second or third fish storm of the season. You can see from a perspective of how much activity we've had in the basin, we were extremely active with Beryl. Then we quieted down in August and early September. We're in the middle of the road right now, but a good chance to climb back into the upper percentiles at this point for accumulated cyclone energy. That basically takes the energy produced by storms, how big they are, calculates it to see how active the season really was. Because you can name every little, I want to call it whale fart, but every little thunderstorm cloud can get named if you wanted to, and it gets a name, but it doesn't cause any problems. and then you get something that rapidly intensifies in the Gulf like we just saw here yesterday. So right now we are starting to pick up some steam again with the second half of the season remaining extremely active. So let's get on to what's going on with Helene here. Tropical storm with 45-mile-per-hour winds jumping across the Smokies into Tennessee. The storm will continue to weaken, and it will start to slow down as it moves northwest around a big upper low here. So the track takes it into Kentucky and hangs out in the Bluegrass State here right through the weekend. The remains will eventually get kicked eastward. And you can see that things are definitely quieting down across much of the Gulf Coast region. We are going to have scattered showers and storms in Florida, but we will see the surge eventually coming down. And still some tropical storm force winds along our South Carolina coastline here for a little bit longer, and perhaps even some gusts up to that level here near the coast in North Carolina, where we've got bands of rain and storms. We have our tropical storm warning for all of South Carolina, for far eastern Georgia, for far southeast Tennessee, and for the majority of western North Carolina as well, with tropical storm force winds still impacting a lot of these states here this afternoon. Eventually, they'll settle down at this point. So here's a look at the tropics overall. The center of Helene is now right about here, heading in this direction. There's an upper low in here as well. The two are doing what's called a Fujiwara effect, where they rotate and spin around each other, kind of like a do-si-do. We have small but compact here, Hurricane Isaac. We have developing tropical storm Joyce now. Isaac is heading this way. Joyce will follow him. And then we've got a system here that after we see the demise of Joyce could become Kirk. However, we also have this wave here and a little bit of an upper level spin in the Southwest Caribbean. These two are going to head west. And after Helene moves out of the way and kicks offshore here early next week, and a ridge rebuilds in here, we'll see lowering wind shear and the opportunity for more development. This is John over here. That will spin down. But as this ridge builds in, we're going to have another Central American gyre in here. So the possibility of multiple storms, one on the Pacific side and at least one on the Gulf side here as we get later into next week and next weekend. Pretty crazy. Here's the upper level, and you can just see how big our storm is, even though it's merging with an upper level low here in West Tennessee and northern Alabama. Just a huge canopy of clouds. A ton of dry air in here, though, so we are going to dry out significantly in Georgia into South Carolina as well for the weekend. Cloud cover, pretty crazy to see here. Our high cloud tops and thunderstorms right now just moving past the Raleigh area into parts of eastern North Carolina, even extending up into Virginia. This is the area to watch for severe weather this afternoon and maybe into early tonight as well. Here is the NWS radar. You see the dry slot kicking in here across all of South Carolina. That doesn't mean the flooding is not done. In fact, it's going to take a while for rivers to recede. They'll actually get worse before they get better in many places. But you can see rain is already making its way into places that do need it. Parts of Ohio and Southwest PA, West Virginia. No flooding overall across this area, but we do need to keep an eye on these rain rates as well. Here is the track of what's left of Helene tomorrow, stuck in Kentucky, and then what's left gets picked up by the next trough and gets kicked offshore, and winds will go below tropical storm strength, it looks like, by this evening. Very busy hazards map. The green indicates flood watches. The dark red indicates tropical storm warnings, and probably also, I'm sure, flood watches in there. High wind warnings across Tennessee, East Kentucky, southern and central Indiana, southwest Ohio, and parts of West Virginia. We do have the opportunity for these winds to cause some power outages, even all the way up to maybe Indianapolis and Dayton, Ohio, and into central parts of Illinois. Just a really nasty, sloppy system. Tornado watch for central and eastern North Carolina and the south side of Virginia, all the way over to the Hampton Roads area, all the way back to near Lynchburg. And we do have a few tornado warnings embedded in this line as well, which I will show you in a little bit. Obviously, severe weather is going to be a challenge to deal with. These cells spin up very quickly. They move quickly, and you can see tornado warnings near Goldsboro, near Henderson, North Carolina. This band will spread up north and east towards Roanoke Rapids and towards Martinsville and Danville and Lunenburg and Farmville, those areas. We may see another band as well coming in off the coast for those of you in eastern North Carolina. Flash flooding possibly. My backyard just flooded in Raleigh here with this band that came through. We didn't have severe weather, fortunately, but we're fortunate. We're blessed because there are folks that are just getting incredibly crushed right now. You see on the left here, we have flash flood emergency still for parts of the Atlanta area, mainly around Stone Mountain. We have a flash flood emergency for Buncombe County. That includes the Asheville area. And if you click on that, Basically the North Fork of the Swannanoa is reaching a record level, worse than what happened during Hurricane Ivan in 2004. We've got a flash flood emergency, as I'd mentioned here, Gwinnett County, mainly around Stone Mountain, south of Lilburn, those areas. We have a flash flood emergency. I'd mentioned Buncombe County, but also just roads are completely inundated with rain right now. I'm just going to go through the list real quick before we talk about the rest of the tropics. Eastern Tennessee, Johnson County, near Mountain City and on southward, flash flood emergency from the rains last night. Carter and Unicoi counties, flash flood emergency as well when we get down to the North Carolina-Tennessee border. Western North Carolina, Henderson, Polk, and Rutherford, flash flood emergency. The Lake Lure area is overflowing, and we're going to see extreme amounts of flooding here south and east of Lake Lure where that water goes. Flash flood emergency for Avery and Mitchell County up in the mountains. And that includes some of these mountain towns outside of Grandfather, maybe Banner Elk and Newland and those locations, Spruce Pine. Flash flood emergency for Alexander. My goodness, I can't even keep up on here. You guys get the point here. It's just, okay, Alexander, Burke, Caldwell, McDowell in Western North Carolina. Haywood County, flash flood emergency. I have not seen Watauga on here, but I would expect we will because all of Boone was underwater for a while, and that has never happened. King Street, right by the Mass General Store, I was watching cameras for. Greenville, Spartanburg, catastrophic flooding expected here along our rivers, downtown Greenville, all the way over to Spartanburg. Just incredible amounts of rain, and worse when you get into these urban areas that are built up on top of it. Okay, here we go. Flash flood emergency for Allegheny, Ashe, Watauga, and Wilkes. So all of Jefferson, West Jefferson, Boone, Blowing Rock, Wilkesboro, up to Sparta, up to Roaring Gap, all those areas dealing with a flash flood emergency. Virginia, you are getting it as well in Grayson and Smith counties. Places like Troutdale and just south of Marion, Sugar Grove, seeing incredible amounts of flooding, all coming down the mountains here from Mount Rogers. Just very incredible to see this. Flash flood emergency as well for Carroll, Galax, and Wythe counties. So much of southwestern Virginia getting flooded out as we speak. Gaston and Mecklenburg, this is a little closer to the Charlotte area, right along the river here. Mount Holly, Whitewater Center, incredible amounts of flooding ongoing. So you guys get the point here. Just an incredible storm, once in a generation. The flooding doesn't stop today. These waterways are still seeing water coming down the mountains. It could actually swell more and more over the weekend after the rain ends, and it could be several weeks before we can even clean up from this. And I would love to say we're done, but we are just still in the meat of the hurricane season at this point. Here's a look at the projected radar for the rest of today. You can see things are going to spin down, thank goodness. It'll stay wet around the Ohio River here right through the weekend, but the severe weather threat comes to an end this evening. Here's a larger scale view of what's going on here, and I got logged out. I'm the guy that has all the tabs. I know you guys have been talking to me about that. Wind speeds are going to start coming down here, but we are going to see gusts over 60 across parts of northern and eastern Kentucky and Tennessee, southern Ohio here this afternoon. This is 2 o'clock Eastern. The worst wind gets up to Indianapolis and Dayton later this afternoon. And then back into Illinois on the backside of the system, we could have gusts over 50 miles per hour, maybe even sneaking over towards the St. Louis area here tonight. So scattered power outages will be possible here. I don't think we see major flooding. Fortunately, I think our winds do come down. Tomorrow's just a breezy day, and then Sunday should be quite a bit quieter. Rainfall totals here through the weekend. Obviously, heavy amounts continue in Virginia, West Virginia, right along the slopes here of the mountains, the escarpments. Pretty heavy rain as well, though, even into northwest Tennessee, back into eastern Arkansas, southeast Missouri, southern Illinois, southern central Indiana, southwestern Ohio. Generally speaking, 2 to 4 inches. Some folks could see less. Here's our enhanced risk for tornadoes. The risk is now clearing Fayetteville, Durham, and Raleigh, but continuing that chance here across the southeastern portion of North Carolina, Greenville, Morehead City, Wilmington, Clinton, all of these under the gun here this afternoon with a 10% chance of a tornado. There could even be a stronger tornado at some point in here, just something to keep an eye on here. I do think our chances diminish somewhat towards dark tonight, but we still have that risk even to the Outer Banks here up until about 7 or 8 o'clock. Southern Virginia as well, and maybe not Virginia Beach proper, but when you get back to the Great Dismal Swamp and all the way back towards places like South Hill, Carr Lake, those areas, maybe even all the way towards Lynchburg, we still will have a chance for some tornadoes for the rest of today. Here's a view of the rest of the Atlantic real fast. We're just going to run through these storms really quickly to save some time. This is Hurricane Isaac, 75-mile-per-hour storm, potentially could get a little stronger tomorrow and then becoming post-tropical by the end of the weekend. This is Tropical Storm Joyce, pretty well-banded storm system, good outflow, 40-mile-per-hour winds, may get up to 50 or 60 by the weekend, but then is expected to get killed by wind shear in an approaching front Monday and Tuesday of next week. And we have stuff going on in the Pacific. We have Tropical Storm John, which was a hurricane yesterday. Got an area passing south of Hawaii, no big deal there, but a close call for central Japan here with a new tropical storm. I think it's Jebi. Cimarron going to die off, but this system needs to be watched. Julian has the potential to make a loop northeast of the Philippines and maybe threaten Taiwan and portions of the Okinawa prefecture here, the islands of southwest Japan, as we get into the middle of next week, maybe another very strong typhoon. Pretty crazy stuff here. Here's John, and you can see a lot more disorganized today, fortunately, but the rain is not ending. It continues and continues and continues, and this system will eventually pull away from Mexico over the weekend, but not before dropping additional amounts of 8 to 10 inches of rain. Some places have had 3 feet, so pretty crazy. So not to tease, not to stress anybody else out here, but you can see next week the Gulf of Mexico stays active. In particular, we see it in the southwestern Gulf, but even Florida, everywhere south of the boundary here is going to see wet weather. Something very well could spin up. And on the Pacific side, there could be some action as well. And it stays busy here right into the second week of October. We don't know exactly how things play out, but this is obviously of concern with all the rain that we've had recently to see yet more potential development. And even if we don't get a stronger system, which is what I'm pulling for, we've got more rain coming. We get a slight break before things ramp back up. If you take a look at the European ensembles, you'll see gradual development will be possible in the Northwest Caribbean towards Tuesday and Wednesday. That will head into the Southern Gulf, but there's a possibility another piece spins up east of it, both of which need to be watched, by the way. But you can see we do have some solutions that are starting to turn things up to the north and east later next weekend. Again, a little early to get too specific. If you look at some operational models, the Canadians done a pretty decent job with storm genesis. You can see with the gyre, there's a Pacific storm and there is a Caribbean storm by Wednesday. The Caribbean storm, by the way, is taking a track very similar to some of the big ones that we've seen this time of the year, like Michael. This is not a guarantee, of course, that we have a hurricane in the Northern Gulf, but it is showing something over the weekend heading into the Florida Panhandle. The GFS model is a little bit different. It actually has a couple of systems to watch, but tries to develop the main system near Louisiana on Friday night and Saturday. So worst case scenario, we do have something that pops up next Wednesday, moves into the Gulf by Thursday, and affects the Gulf Coast over the weekend. That's the worst case. I don't know how strong this will be yet. The GFS continues to give us some mixed signals. The run before it took it west into the Western Gulf and made it a hurricane, but moved it into Mexico. I don't think it's coming to Texas. It's either going to sit down here or it's going to get lifted out to the north and east. The run before hurricane hitting Louisiana, again, you're going to see things change significantly. The run before hurricane hitting Southwest Florida. So at this point, no need to go stressing about it. Just know that there will be potentially something again towards the weekend. The European Ensemble Control has a system heading towards the Florida Panhandle by the beginning of next week. And then a big front after that should quiet things down, we hope. The GFS Ensemble Solutions, again, kind of two different camps. One, something lingering closer to Mexico, like we saw with Francine about a month ago. And then also a track that resembles what we've seen with storms like Michael and Helene and Ian, which could be a threat to Florida. And if you're in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, you can be included in that threat as well. So at this point, it's just too early to say. I think worst case scenario, we have something heading to the northern or eastern Gulf towards next weekend, about 7, 8, 9 days from now. Best case is that it doesn't develop or it sits out here closer to Mexico. But even then, if it sits around longer, that is still going to be something that we need to keep a close eye on just for the following week, the week of October 7th. And finally, the Canadian Ensemble shows several solutions here, some aggressive ones heading towards Florida as soon as next Friday, some heading towards the Panhandle and Central Gulf Coast Friday into Saturday, and then other solutions which hang back and are slower and are more of an issue for the following week of the 7th and 8th. So, and we're going to have more activity over the Central Atlantic to watch as well. So I'm praying for everybody's safety here. Thank you for trusting me with your weather. I know there are a million of us on YouTube. There's a lot of meteorologists, a lot of enthusiasts. I am, in fact, a meteorologist. I try to stay accurate and give folks confidence in my forecast. But as you all know, things can change quickly, and that obviously adds some burden to what we do here. But as always, I appreciate you, and I pray that you have a wonderful rest of the week and weekend. I want to give all the honor and glory, though, to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He's given me this gift to help you all. He's given me new life. He's given me the hope of eternity. And because of that, no matter how difficult things can be, no matter how much negativity I can run into when I put myself out there on YouTube every day, I know that the Lord is greater and that he is our ultimate healer. Psalm 121, I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And I wanted to share that good news with you today. I pray that everybody is safe. And if you do have any prayer requests, please send them my way. I will spend time this weekend praying for you. I'll try to be back on tomorrow. Hope you guys have a great Friday. See ya.